Hello, America. Welcome to your Leo Nation, where we believe in and support the rule of law. And speaking of law, you see a face you've seen before. Maybe it's a face you don't want to see again, but
sitting back.
He's sitting back. We're side by side this time. My best friend in the world, Marcelo Arrue. Marcelo, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mark. Florida is everything they say it is. It's awesome. Awesome.
Well, I'm going to talk about that for a little bit if you want. But when I said speaking of law, because we know that Marcelo is still in the law enforcement business, we won't talk about exactly where he works, but because he's speaking on his behalf and for nobody else. But it is great to have you here in the free state of Florida. You made it one person better. Bring your patriotism here to Florida. But I'll turn it back over to you. I've just been here for almost a week now. And
Yep. Just, the one thing that I noticed that you don't see in California a whole lot is just the American flags. I think we talked about that. It's such a nice feeling to have patriotic Americans show their support and their love for this country. And you see it all over the streets, everywhere you go here in Florida. It's just that patriotism. And it's such a nice feeling to have people wearing, regardless of your political, views. Some people I've seen with Trump, other people, with other shirts. But the nice thing is that you're not persecuted over it. Unlike California, California, you wear a MAGA hat and people are trying to take it off you. They're assaulting you. And that's just not America, and it's just a nice feeling. It's just a nice feeling here. I love it. Aside from the tax breaks you have in Florida, which way outdo California. The worst thing about we talked about this, though, if the worst thing about Florida is the traffic lights take a little longer, I mean, it's a win, man. That's a win. So.
It is. Yeah, it's one of the things that we noticed. We came here a few years ago for the first time here in Panhandle. And it's just people have a more laid back, but I think more, it's a more grounded feeling. People are not pushy. I mean, certainly people like, just by chance, I'm wearing this and you do see, flags and things like that, but it's still not a pushy feeling. It's just people saying, hey, I love my country. I support this particular candidate or this particular president, things like this. And people get along very well, really across the board, whether it's politically, racially, economically. It really is, to use a word, from the left side of the political spectrum, it really is a diverse place in that sense, where there are a lot of different points of view in certain areas of life. It's certainly more conservative here in this region of Florida. But when it comes to, I said, racially, I mean, you just don't feel I'm in an interracial marriage, you're in an interracial marriage. There were interracial couples all over this place. I mean, right here in this region. I'm not talking about Miami or Orlando, things like that. I'm talking right here, a fairly rural area of Florida. And it seems like nobody pays attention. Nobody gives a darn about it. And in California and other states, it seems like it's always it seems to be the forefront of everybody's mind about race relations, things like this, which in my opinion makes things worse when you focus on this. Leave it alone. Absolutely. So, but we are glad to have you here. You got your whole family here.
Yes.
And
yes, I'm happy that my wife, Lisa and Bella, are here. They're having a great time.
You have two wives?
Oh, that's right.
Oh, your wife, Lisa, and
my daughter.
Okay. Wanted to clarify.
Some countries that's legal. Luckily in America, it's still not. It's great to have Lisa and Bella with us. Coming here, and they're just enjoying it. They're loving everything about it. Bella's a foodie, so she loves the different restaurants. She has a very diverse palate. I mean, I think with think by the age of 4, she was having sushi. Never stopped having it. Loves it. And so she loves trying the different restaurants. Doesn't matter if it's Mexican, Italian, French. I mean, you name it, she'll try it. And always been that way. And Lise is loving the atmosphere here. So we're having a great time.
Well, we are too, having you here, really enjoying it and looking forward to the coming week of your visit. So, the other day, speaking of California, I was, I get a notification, Marcelo, on Facebook by a mutual friend. I won't use his name, but he put himself out there, but I still won't use his name. But it's a mutual friend of ours who owns a bike shop.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
And bicycle shop. You can see our bicycle jerseys here behind us. Marcelo and I have a long history of racing bicycles together. And but anyway, he's kind of on the other political side of the spectrum right now, and likes taking jabs at the former president, 45. And sometimes I'll respond, on a thread. And one popped up the other day, and it, there's this accusation or statement about Donald Trump not being truthful, lying.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course it related to the Trump trial verdict, the 34 felony convictions, which I talked about in the previous show, I think just last week. And I couldn't help but scratch the itch, and so I responded to that. And look, if you're on one political side or the other, you're obviously going to try to enhance the image of your guy, and you're going to try to denigrate the image of the other guy. We all do it. We're all human. We get that. But there's some things where the facts are the facts. And look, the whole thing about Trump's infidelity accusations, yeah, I don't have any doubt in my mind that he's been unfaithful to his wife more than once, things like that. And I say it, I own it. I mean, that's my opinion.
Sure.
I believe he did. And I support him for policy reasons. And the same thing like people who voted for Bill Clinton twice, even before he won the election in 1992, he and his wife, Hillary, come out and say, yes, we've had some marital problems and blah, blah, infidelity and blah, blah, blah. And people still voted for him. And I have no problem with that, because you're voting for people based on their policies, right? Not on, being a saint in their private life. So, but I was thinking about this. I'm thinking, okay, so the accusation here in this thread was, about dishonesty and not telling the truth and blah, 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 blah. So I just, again, I knew off the top of my head a lot of things that the current president has said over the years that are maybe questionable. I'm being a little facetious here, but I went to, and I says, almost every show, I try to bring these sources. I try to bring the receipts to back up my opinions. And I try to make those receipts from a source that generally don't support my point of view. So with this one, with the current president, our commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world, Joe Biden, I went to the New York Times. Now, if anybody can go find the last time the New York Times supported a conservative Republican for, endorsed a Republican or things like that, let me know. I mean, maybe they have, but I don't think anybody listening or watching this show today would think that the New York Times is a right-leaning publication, right? So I went to the New York Times, and this is from June 9th, very recent, June 9th of, it was updated actually June 11th. I'm looking at it right here. Here are my notes. Here's my article. Now, again, I'm telling you, this is New York Times. Here's the headline. Biden loves to tell tall tales. We cut them down to size. Now, by the way, I'm going to interject here. I'm only guessing the New York Times is doing this now because they believe that maybe Joe Biden is no longer viable politically, that maybe there'll be something that happens at the convention, a contested, convention. Maybe he'll step down. Maybe the New York Times smells blood in the water in the sense that, hey, we need to get a new candidate. I don't know why they did this, but my point is, it came from the New York Times, ladies and gentlemen, not Fox News, not OAN, It came from Fox News. So let me read a little bit about this, and Marcelo, I'll give you a chance to chime in.
Sure.
And a chance for me to catch my own breath, because I talk too much, as I always say. This is first paragraph. I'm going to skip through most of this. Just want to give you the crux here. And Anthony will try to link to this later on so people can go look at the article entirety. By President Biden's account, he has a fierce civil rights activist in his youth. Or he was a fierce civil rights activist in his youth. Had an uncle who fell prey to cannibals and used to drive an 18-wheeler. In President Biden's telling, he was a teenage civil rights activist, a former trucker, the first in his family to go to college, and the nephew of a cannibalism victim. All of these claims stretch the truth or are downright false. But Mr. Biden persists in telling personal tales with rhetorical flourishes and factual liberty when he works a room or regales an audience. They are a way to connect with voters, emphasize his quote-unquote middle-class Joe, unquote, persona, and charm his audience. Now, again, they do a good job of documenting rebuttals to these claims that Joe Biden has made over the years, and there's a whole lot in here. And I think I'm just going to talk about 2 or 3 maybe. So the first one here are some of President Biden's repeated yarns, connecting with his audience through hyperbole. What he said, what Biden said. This is a quote. In our last debate, when I was 29 years old, the first question he was asked after the debate was, do you have any regrets, Senator Boggs? He's talking about a senatorial opponent when he was running against Senator Boggs. And he said, no. Then we came to the very end of the debate where I spoke, and then he was to conclude. This is Senator Boggs, according to Biden, stood up and he said, I was asked if I have any regrets. I said, no, but I have one. Had Joe Biden gone to the Naval Academy when I appointed him, he'd still have 7 months left, and I wouldn't be able to run, and he wouldn't be able to run. So Biden's claim here is that Boggs appointed Biden to the Naval Academy, and Boggs is happy that Joe Biden didn't accept it wishes he had accepted it because Biden would still be there and wouldn't be challenging him to a senatorial seat. Here we go. Biden has repeatedly recounted this tale to graduating cadets at various military academies and to families of service members. In high school, in the 1960s, he had been nominated to attend the United States Naval Academy by Senator J. Caleb Boggs of Delaware, his Republican opponent in his first Senate race. Mr. Boggs, Mr. Biden sometimes adds, later lamented that Mr. Biden had declined to accept the nomination in the 1972 debate. In an anecdote that dates as far back as 2010, when Mr. Biden said in a speech that Mr. Boggs had considered him for the Academy. It is possible that his nomination occurred, but the New York Times could not verify Mr. Biden's claim. Gonna skip down, and this is the last part of it. The Academy does not have any records of Mr. Biden receiving a nomination or appointment, said a spokesperson, Ashley Hokaiko, but it does not possess preliminary applications or requests made to congressional offices. Mr. Boggs started his first term as senator in 1961. If the current deadline is any indication, members of Congress have until January 31st to submit nominations to the Naval Academy. Mr. Biden graduated from high school that June and began his first semester at the University of Delaware that fall. The Delaware Historical Society, which houses Mr. Boggs' Senate records, could find only his nominations to the Naval Academy from 1962. Mr. Biden's name was not on that list. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, this article is long and chock full of examples, and that's one of a couple I'll give you, but I'm going to stop right there, Marcelo. I'll let you chime in.
Well, I'll tell you, and I think you give the New York Times a little too much credit. I do, because I think they can't lie anymore. That's the truth, folks. You know, that they've exhausted everything they can do to try to protect this man from all his blunders, all his failed policies. He's put the country in danger. I believe it. They just caught 8 terrorists who they let go because of Biden's policies. Then they went back and actually caught all 8 of them. But they were in our country. They came in illegally, and now luckily they caught them and they've been arrested. But this is Biden's policies, and the liberal media just can't hide it anymore. They've tried, folks. For the last 3 years, they've tried. And I'll give you some facts here. And here's one. The false and misleading claims of President Biden, Washington Post. Biden loves to tell tall tales. We cut them down to size, New York Times. A look at Biden's first year of false claims, CNN. Biden makes false and misleading claims, CNN. I mean, they're just done. They just can't hide it anymore. You know, and I'll tell you, the liberal media tries. They did. They tried for the first 3 years. They tried to hide his blunders. They tried to hide his failed policies, but they just can't do it anymore. People see it. Okay. And this is why CNN, MSNBC, NBC, this is why they lose audience, because what comes out of their mouths and what the American people actually see in reality when they go to the grocery store, when they go to the gas station, doesn't compare. Here's another one from PolitiFact. 45% of claims made by NBC and MSNBC pundits and air personalities are mostly false.
That's crazy, because PolitiFact is another left.
And this is from PolitiFact.
Right.
They say 40, that's almost half, folks. Unless you're doing your own research, you're going to get some false claims in there. And here's the thing, and this is straight out of the communist playbook. They don't lie about everything, but they only tell you half truths. Okay? They only tell you half truths because they want you to lean in their direction. Mm-hmm. Okay? It is much different than telling you the whole truth and going, go ahead and decide. Mm-hmm. Here's both sides. Here's the all the facts, you know. And I make an analogy as if my analogy has always been, if a news station reports that 3 black people were shot by police, and that's all they report, then someone that's watching that news station is going to say police are killing black people. Mm-hmm. But if they told the whole truth and said, today, 3 black people were shot, 4 whites and 2 Asians, then you would go, okay, maybe they're trigger happy, but it's not against blacks.
Right.
So that is the difference between telling half truths and the whole truth. And I think that the liberal media has just come to a point where they just can't do it anymore.
You know, Marcel, I think you're right. It is at that point that they may feel now that they've lost so much credibility and there's so much information out there, and that people, look, I'm not a big believer in feelings. Feelings are fine. You know, it's great to feel good, things like this, but feelings can be very deceptive. Sure. But the point is that people do not feel safe. They do not feel that they're in control of their economic outlook. And I think those feelings are based substantially on reality. We talked about this offline just yesterday about the latest DOJ, FBI crime stats showing the crime is down, blah, 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 whatever. We talked about how that's
right,
terribly misleading. But people feel a certain way, and they watch some of these news agencies telling them, oh, hey, the economy's great, the stock market's doing this, and more jobs were added. And they go, well, that's great. How come I can't make my mortgage? I can't make my rent. You know, how come I get picked between this and that this month? And so it's an excellent point about half truths. Now, you did raise up you raised a good example here, or it was just ironic. You raised up the, kind of the racial aspect in law enforcement in this about blacks, because this is the second and last one example I'm going to go about Biden and his lies. And again, these are not stumbles. These aren't exaggerated. These are flat out lies. These are flat out lies. And let me read this one here to you. By the way, this was also in a thread that came up. It was a racial reference in this thread I was talking about the other day. And so this one really struck a nerve with me in particular. Mr. Biden often repeats his claim when attending events. Oh, I'm sorry. This is about driving 18-wheelers that he never drove either. Do you remember this one? And again, this is not even, it's on here too, but I'm not reading it. I remember this one just from, off the top of my head about driving 18-wheelers. I mean, it never happened. He never drove. He was never a commercial 18-wheeler, truck driver. It never happened. He said he drove 18-wheelers when he was talking to a particular audience. Yeah. I forget what blue collar group he was talking to. I think it was in Pennsylvania last year sometime. But it never happened. I mean, it's just a lie. It would be like, if I drove 18-wheelers, if somebody went back in time, if I had told the Highway Patrol that, 34 or 5 years ago when I was applying, hey, yeah, I drove 18-wheelers, I know about commercial enforcement, and they did my background check, I would have been disqualified for lying, rightfully so. Right. But Joe Biden has repeated that lie over and over and over, trying to get in with the blue collar crowd. But anyway, it's another one you can look at, but this is what I was going to talk about. What he said. So, quote, as a matter of fact, the first organization I ever joined was the NAACP. Didn't get to vote until I was 21 those days, when I got involved in civil rights when I was 15. He said this at the NAACP event in Michigan in May. This is a quote. I think he's talking about his mom on this. She said, remember when they were desegregating Linfield, the neighborhood? It was 70 homes built, suburbia. And I told you there was a black family moving in and people were down there protesting. And I told you not to go down there. This is mom talking to Biden as he says it. And you went down there. Remember that? And you got arrested, standing on the porch with a black family. Now, and I said in this thread on Facebook the other day, I said, you know what? I'm 61. My parents were both born in the 20s. Yes, so they're older when they had me, 42 and 37 respectively. My parents, and my parents were born in 1921, 1926 respectively, in Dallas, Texas. So my parents are the people who rode in the back of the bus. My dad, he was the black soldier who served in a segregated armed services under George Patton in North Africa, Italy, and in Europe, and later on in the South Pacific, preparing for the invasion of Japan, which thank God never happened, or I may not be here. But I say that because to remind people that there were people like my parents who truly suffered under Jim Crow. They suffered under Jim Crow. They suffered under codified, legalized segregation. And then for someone like Joe Biden, and by the way, remember his current vice president, Kamala, whatever her name is, I always forget, Harris.
Kamala?
Yep. Remember in the debate, basically she said between the lines, oh, you're racist because he was against, he was a segregationist. Sorry, he was. He talked about when basically he didn't want white kids going into the jungle of the black communities with busing. Do you remember this, ladies and gentlemen? If you don't believe Mark, I'm sure you can read it for yourself. Read the quotes. That's what he said. It's disgusting, it's insulting, and it disregards the true suffering that happened in this country based on legalized racial division. So he claims that he got arrested in the porch of a black family. Now, this is an interview with Howard Stern. Maybe some of you saw that. So flying on down here to the very end, local newspapers reported that in the spring of 1959, when Mr. Biden was 16, a black family moved into an all-white neighborhood in Wilmington, prompting residents to protest against integration. Police officers described the demonstrators as a mob, some armed with firebombs, and arrested 7 people, including 4 teenagers, for possessing fireworks. The house was bombed and destroyed later that year. Mr. Biden joined the NAACP during his first political race for the Newcastle County Council in 1970, when he was in his late 20s. That's in contrast to what he said earlier. According to a 2019 Washington Post article that included an interview with the former president of the Delaware NAACP. And that's all I'm going to read from there. Well, those are just two flagrant lies. Well, three if you count the sidebar there with the 18-wheeler experience. Yeah. But even the 18-wheeler experience, in other words, these things are so easily disprovable. You have to think that someone is either in other words, there's a psychological disorder where they are an habitual liar. And of course, we know he lied about where he finished law school. He lied about being the first person in his family in college, on and on and on and on. Yes, Donald Trump lied about how big his audience was for his inauguration in 2021. Yet it wasn't the biggest of all time. I said it then. Yeah. But you look at the reams and reams of lies, and some of these lies are substantial in a political and social and policy sense. We're talking about what he did in the civil rights movement. So for those of you who think that Donald Trump's a liar, that's fine. But if you disregard what Joe Biden has said all of his public life, and by the way, how he was sanctioned for plagiarizing, then you're just not being intellectually honest. It's as simple as that.
Well, it doesn't really matter, Mark, because most of these idiots, and I'm talking about most liberals, whatever he says are going to believe. Joe Biden could come out and say, hey, guess what? I lied about everything. And so what? And you're still going to vote for him. They're still going to vote for him. And that's the honest to God truth. You know, I am tired of trying to tell people, well, he lied about this, he lied about that. They know he lied. I believe it. Most of these liberals know that he lies and they don't care. But they do care when Donald Trump says something. So, in my opinion, if you have low standards for your current president, then you don't really have a platform to sit on. Unless you're going to go out there and go, yeah, Joe Biden's a liar. I'm not voting for him because he's a liar. I'm not voting for him because his uncle got eaten by cannibals and I feel bad for him. And so I'm not. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean, this is just the regular look. He lies about civil rights movements. He lied about COVID, and yet people still did it.
Yeah.
People still did it. And people, especially in California, pointed fingers on the people like myself who didn't want to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Who said, this is wrong. You know, the whole my body, my choice. Well, my body, my choice. Mm-hmm. But no, you're a vax denier. You're killing people. Right?
You're murdering.
You're murdering. Yeah. You're murdering people. Mm-hmm. You know, and I'm tired of it, man. Yeah. I'm tired of it. If Joe Biden came out today and said, put your finger up your butts and you'll never get the flu again, they do it. California be the first one there. Yeah, let's do it.
Well, by the way, I think the governor's had some of his own ass for years now.
It's true.
So he's already, he's already on board.
He's ahead of the curve. You know, but that's the truth. I'm telling you. I mean, I know we joke about it, but if he came out with something ridiculous, the liberals in California, and unfortunately I live there, will do it.
Yeah.
Will do it. You know, and I'm tired of trying to convince people that he's a liar. We all know he is. Mm-hmm. We all know he is. How can you possibly read an article talking about his uncle being eaten by cannibals and think that there's any truth to this? Mm-hmm. And then you've got the liberal media saying it's a lie. Yeah. He doesn't make false statements. He lies, folks. That's it. It's plain and simple. He lies. And you know what? It works for him. It works for him because you idiots out there are still going to vote for the dude.
By the way,
going to vote for.
Not this audience. You're too bright for that.
Well, yeah. I mean, and you idiots know who you are. So I'm just, you know what? The gloves are off.
Yeah.
You want a president that lies to you and you want to believe it? Well, there you go. There's why you have a crappy economy. That's why 35% it's an uptick in groceries. That's why you're paying the gas prices you're paying. You want to continue that? Go ahead. There he is. Vote for him again. Vote for Sleepy Joe. I mean, you want 7 million illegals coming through our country? Some of them terrorists? There it is. Do not complain when one of our buildings come down. Do not complain when a female college student gets raped and murdered by some immigrant from Venezuela. Don't complain because you voted for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you should take responsibility for your vote. You voted for it and people die because of it. So there it is. Plain and simple. You idiots want to vote for him? There he is. He's going to continue to lie. He's going to continue to tell you that the economy's great, that there's nothing to see here, that the border is secure. Hey, go ahead. Every news station is telling you we've got 7 million illegals year to date.
Or more.
Or more.
We don't really know.
From the day that Biden took office. 7 million, folks. I mean, yeah. I don't know what else to say. It's frustrating, you know, and it gets to a point where you're going, either you're blind, stupid, and dumb, or you just don't want to see the facts.
Or you want what's happening to happen. See, that's a possibility. And by the way, there are two things you hit on there, Marcel, but you're right. It's either you're blind to this or you actually want, and by the way, people say it all the time, they actually want the collapse of not just America, but Western culture.
Which is another thing we should believe them.
We should believe them because we are, imperialist, colonists and so forth and so on. And it's white supremacy. And now whatever Christian nationalism, they start rolling out that phrase a couple of months ago. It seems like that one's died now because it wasn't getting traction. Christian nationalism was one they rolled out. But there are two things you hit on. One was, and there are a lot of things that you touched on, but two of the things you touched on are really close to home for both of us, and me in particular, was taking off the gloves. I mean, for those of you who've been watching the podcast since day one with me, I really, at the beginning, I thought, you know what, we're going to talk about the rule of law and I think everybody's kind of on the same page in general. You know what, I'll tell you right now, I've grown up in the last year and a half. Like you said, Marcelo, there are some people, for whatever reason, and we could talk psychology or motives forever and ever and ever. I don't know why necessarily, but there are some people who are just not going to even come to the center on some of these things. And like you said, let millions and millions and millions of unknowns come across the border and so forth and so on. So I have evolved in the sense that when I talk about rule of law, I'm unabashed about my opinion that the rule of law in general is only supported by one party in this country. In general, there are exceptions on both sides. We get that. But I'm talking about in the macro sense that the rule of law is supported in general by the Republican Party, conservatives, people who live in rural America. It's just the way that it is. And I'm going to give you an example in going to the rule of law here. Right. So I took the gloves off. That's one. And number two is the rule of law. And that's the next thing I want to get to. And for those of you, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on right now, ask yourselves why. Why is what I'm getting ready to talk about now, why is it so? And we can discuss that, later on if you want to, Marcelo. But now this next one here, you guys saw this recently in Lafayette Park in Washington, D.C. You saw the carnage that happened with the destruction, the mutilation of the monuments there in Lafayette Park. Now, again, this is from MSN.com. MSN.com. That's where I got this one. Biden ignores pro-Hamas protesters' monument vandalism. Trump's 2020 executive order would end it. When I saw that from MSN.com, that Biden is letting this crap happen, and Trump's executive order enforcing the law would end it. That's really powerful. So let me read this. I think a lot of you saw this, but then I juxtapose this to something else that happened in the country. Pro-Palestinian protesters vandalized multiple statues in Lafayette Park across from the White House on Saturday. This is several days ago, but no arrests were made. Keep that in your mind for a little down the road here in this podcast. No arrests were made. And as of the taping of today's podcast, no arrests have been made yet. I don't think they will be. Offering another stark contrast between President Joe Biden's and former President Donald Trump's administrations. Good for innocent. Among the statue stamps were those of Revolutionary War heroes Marquis de Lafayette, for which the park is named, and French General Comte de Rochambeau, both of whom fought alongside George Washington in the decisive Battle of Yorktown in 1781 that in effect ended the war, the Washington Post reported. This is important. These people are taking advantage of the First Amendment that wouldn't exist had it not been for these French generals and George Washington fighting the British and providing and incubating, developing, and ensuring the freedoms that we have in this country that unfortunately are slowly dissolving if we don't stop them. Anti-American pro-Hamas thugs desecrated the statues of veterans literally across the street from the White House, a blatant violation of federal law. On video, Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas said in a Sunday post on X, "I expect the Department of Justice to use every technique against them that it used against the grandmas in MAGA hats on January 6th. And if it doesn't now, it will next year," he added. It's a great point. I mean, these people are on federal property in front of federal officers. By the way, there were 71 state park rangers there, and there were thousands and thousands of these protesters. So there's no way. I mean, Marcelo and I are obviously very familiar with law enforcement. One of the things is that if it's you against 100 people, you can't take any enforcement action. You're just going to get your butt kicked and maybe killed. You have to wait for backup. And there never was any backup. So these guys couldn't take any action. The point is, all of this criminal activity, the vandalizing of these monuments were witnessed by law enforcement. So there's no question when it comes to evidence, the physical evidence, the witness evidence, you can't have a more powerful case against any number of these people. And you know they're all on videotape. All of the Jan 6ers were on videotape, were they not? We know that cameras are all over the place in Washington, D.C. So the federal government wanted these people right now, before we finish taping this episode, they could have most of them rounded up. You know it and I know it. But they're still out there, free as a bird. The Washington Free Beacon reported no arrests were made among the thousands of demonstrators who were calling on Biden to force a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Slogans such as "Israel, go to hell," "Hamas is justified," and "Death to America," by the way, spelled with 3 Ks, KKK in America, were graffiti on city property, and protesters blocked traffic as they held signs reading "F Israel," "Stand with Hamas," and other chants included "Kill another Zionist now," and "Death to Israel," the outlet reported at the Washington Free Beacon.
And what about today, where the guy said, I wish Hitler was alive?
Yes, we were watching this morning. By the way, that was on Fox News. Like I said, I'm bringing you diverse sources here. This morning on Fox News, we were watching this. This guy is saying, a Hamas supporter, yep, he wishes Hitler was here, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, yeah, he would take care of all of you. Yep. Talking to the Jewish counter protesters. Absolutely. And these are the same people, ladies and gentlemen, we're out here. I mean, listen to their own words. Listen, "F Israel," "Death to Israel," "Death to Zionists," "Want to kill a Zionist." These are the same people. And were they arrested? Now, I tell you what, think about that. Think about that. You take those words and just change one word from Zionist or Jew or Israel, and you put black in there. Yep. Need I say more? Yep. Really? So the question is, why is this going on? Let me finish this. For people asking where the police were yesterday, U.S. Park Police, Fraternal Order of Police said only 71 officers were assigned to the police protest that had around 9,000 people. 9,000 people. Of course, here's the thing. Apparently, because it wasn't the first day, they knew this protest was coming. So I got to say this. Sorry. From an operational point of view, from my experience with these types of things that Marcelo and I have dealt with for years and years in Southern California protests, they had intel. I always, as the chief, I was always getting intel from my team, my detectives, my undercover officers. All these guys are bringing intel. They're on social media. They're embedded in these groups. They know what's coming. And we would, to the best of our ability, we would bring an overwhelming force to these protests. So why the federal government, how they dropped the ball on this, or why they dropped the ball on this, that's, I guess, another podcast discussion. White House spokesman Andrew Bates did not even address the vandalism in a statement to NBC News. This is a quote from the spokeshole from the White House. President Biden has always been clear that every American has the right to peacefully express their views, he said. But he has also always been clear that anti-Semitism, violent rhetoric, and endorsing murderous terrorist organizations like Hamas is repugnant, dangerous, and against everything we stand for as a country. How about against the law? How about against the law when you actually deface these monuments, federal property? It wasn't even, like I said, the spokesperson didn't even mention the vandalism. It's a federal crime, ladies and gentlemen. It's a federal crime.
And vandalism is not part of your First Amendment right. Just for in case you guys, some of you are wondering, it is not part of your First Amendment right. Breaking the law is not part of your First Amendment right.
Exactly right. And this is what I said goes to my second point that Marcelo made earlier about the rule of law. Like you guys that and gals listen all the time, you know, I always try to tie every episode to the rule of law in one way or the other. I hope I do a good job with that. But this is an easy one today. That Joe Biden is the commander in chief. He's the chief executive officer. Matter of fact, by the Constitution, he is the only member of the executive branch of the federal government. He's the only one, not the vice president, not the secretary of state, only the president. So he's the chief law enforcement officer in the country, certainly in federal government. Contrast Biden's lack of concern for protecting statues and other public property with Trump's response in 2020. Again, this is MSN.com. On June 26, 2020, 3 days after the Jackson Monument incident, where President Jackson's monument was desecrated, Trump issued an executive order that said key targets in the violent extremist campaign against our country are public monuments, memorials, and statues. Their selection of targets reveals a deep ignorance of history and is indicative of a desire to indiscriminately destroy anything that honors our past and to erase from the public mind any suggestion that our past may be worth honoring, cherishing, remembering, and understanding, it said. I mean, that is it in a nutshell. These people want to wipe out anything that relates to our founding and our history and the sacrifice so many people made to our country. Trump announced that his administration would be prosecuting to the fullest extent permitted under federal law anyone who vandalized a monument, citing Section 1361 of Title 18 U.S. Code, which authorizes a penalty of up to 10 years imprisonment for the willful injury of federal property. Finally, a funny thing happened. Once protesters knew a prison sentence of 10 years on the table and Trump meant business, the statutes stopped tumbling down.
How odd.
Do you remember that? I remember that. The vandalism literally stopped overnight when Donald Trump went on national television and he explained the executive order that he just issued. Finally, Biden revoked Trump's monuments executive order soon after taking office in January 2021, and we see the results. Why would you revoke this executive order? It tells people you can't vandalize, which is already a federal law. That law is still on the books. But the penalties, why would you revoke this? And again, we talk about this all day long. The point is that he did. We'll keep that in a nutshell. I mean, you can expand it if you want to, Marcelo. But this is a stark contrast that this particular media outlet did a very, very good job at exposing and illustrating. The contrast could not be starker from these two administrations, from these two men specifically, and of course, in larger sense, their respective administrations. One side, whether you like the person in the Oval Office or not, one side is clearly, passionately outspoken in the support of objective rule of law. If you behave in a certain way, you have to pay a certain price, a penalty. The other one, if you engage in this behavior, you're going to prison as best we can do. But if you vandalize statues, federal statues, and you are professing the death of Israel and the death of Zionists, that's okay.
Right. Hey, you know what? Look at our country the way it is. You look at states like California, Chicago, New York. They all have the same recipe. Liberal governor, liberal mayor, liberal city council.
Don't forget DA.
Liberal DA. If you look at Chicago, it's the same recipe. If you look at New York, same recipe. It's like you don't have to be a brain surgeon to put all these things together. I mean, these people, in a nutshell, hate this country, folks. I don't know what else to say. They hate this country. They want to destroy the country within, because that's the only way to destroy our liberties, is to destroy the country within. Okay? Crime is through the roof. Why do you think that is? Why is the crime through the roof in California, Chicago, New York? Why? Ask yourself that question. Look into it. Look at your city council. Look at your mayor. Look at your governor. Look at your DA. And then look at the other states that have this incredibly high rise in crime and ask yourself why. I mean, you know, you've touched on all the points, Mark, but there is almost like a pass if you're defacing our heroes in this country, but yet you deface a pride flag, and all of a sudden you are the worst person in America. We will have the FBI, the CIA, the Army, the Air Force, and the Marines coming to get you.
Well, Marcelo, I don't even know if you knew I had an article in my hand.
No.
What a fortuitous segue that was. So Marcelo mentioned specifically the pride flag. Now, again, I want to be totally clear here. So there's no confusion. I'm not conflating, in this particular example, I'm not conflating the federal government or the Joe Biden administration with the article I'm going to refer to now. But I do want to compare and contrast the philosophies and the actions of people based on what's being vandalized of people in the same party. That's the point. One I'm going to address is a state issue, state law enforcement, prosecution, as opposed to the federal example I gave just a few minutes ago. But the people are from the same political ilk. They're from the same political philosophies. They're from the same, in my opinion, Marcelo just made it clear, it's his opinion as well, about really the hatred of Western culture, Americanism, American history, American values. So with that said, this is an article. This is Andy No, I think it's pronounced. It's NGO is his last name on X. So that's the source of this. 3 people were arrested after a so-called, quote unquote, pride, this is in the article I'm quoting, crosswalk was damaged in Spokane, Washington on Wednesday. Now, again, I didn't look up who the DA is.
I only had a wall to run into.
You lose your mind with this stuff. I didn't look up who the DA is. I didn't look up who the mayor is in Spokane, Washington. But how much do you want to bet that they're not Republican, they're not conservative? I'm just listening. I would love the comments. I didn't look. I'm going out on a limb here, right? So they were arrested on Wednesday. These 3 people, they were teenagers. The LGBT, now again, they didn't put Q1, what I'm quoting the article here. The LGBTQ symbol had been repainted recently after liquid was poured on it and was set on fire in mid-May, according to KREM TV. Now, by the way, pride flag or any flag, whatever, setting fire to something, you should be arrested. Because of a public danger. That's a different story. But on Wednesday, 4 people riding Lime scooters were seen riding over the mural repeatedly. Lime is a company that rents electric bikes and scooters. Pride Mural, that's what it's called, Pride Mural in Spokane, Washington.
This is on the street, right?
On the street. Yeah. It's painted on the street. So cars regularly drive over it anyway. Pride Mural in Spokane, Washington faces repeated vandalism, including arson, and a few weeks ago, skid marks made by a 19-year-old teen and 2 minors, and further damage by young children on scooters, while a news reporter is on the scene reporting on its repair. When confronted by, this is a very short piece here. When confronted by witnesses, the scooter riders refused to stop and cursed at the witnesses, according to court documents. One witness said the teens were intentionally making marks in the mural with the scooters they were riding. The quote here, officers observed widespread damage as black scuff marks consistent with scooter wheels were observed across the entirety of the mural, Spokane, unquote. Spokane police said in a statement on the department's website. The area is clearly marked to keep traffic away as it was just repainted to repair previous damage. So it's cordoned off while it was drying or whatever. But it's in a thoroughfare. It's on a highway, a street, for cars to drive over it. At least 14 black skid marks had marked the mural, according to WTGS TV. So forth and so on, blah, 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 blah. Turco, I guess the 19-year-old, Turco was freed on his own recognizance after a Thursday hearing in which prosecutors called for a $15,000 bond on condition of release that he was not to go near the mural or those arrested with him. So forth and so on, and a couple more lines.
So, and I thought I read that they were trying to arrest these juveniles, these kids, for a felony. Is that correct?
They were charged with, I think it was, I read an article too, they were charged with felonies, and maybe the lowest, it was, I think, first degree felony.
Felony for what?
It's felony vandalism. Now, again, I don't know what the laws are in Spokane, Washington, or Washington State in general. But anyway, they conjured up felony vandalism. Now, the point is, ladies and gentlemen, you have people in the same party who are watching, so to speak, across the street from the White House with federal officers in place while the vandalism is taking place against these statues, federal property, and no one is arrested. Then you move to Washington State, Spokane, the city of Spokane, and you have 3 kids, a 19-year-old, he's an adult, 19-year-old, and 2 minors that leave skid marks on a flag that is on the street, and they're arrested for felonies.
It's not an official flag, by the way, also.
It's not an official
flag. It's not a national flag. It's a made-up flag. That's what it is.
It is.
So is Antifa. So is BLM. So those don't have any official authority.
By the way, Marcel, what about crosswalks? What about painted crosswalks? So if I hop on my bicycle or my motorcycle or whatever, and I go sliding through this on purpose in Spokane, Washington, and leave skid mark across, it's just paint. And is that felony vandalism? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And like I said, is it just because of the political implications that it's a pride flag? And
course it is.
It's a rhetorical question. But this is the mindset. This is the mindset that we are dealing with here. First of all, if anybody's foolish enough, like you said, to paint something that they want preserved on a street, you're dumber than I thought before that came to my mind a second ago. So I would never want anybody to paint the American flag on a street. I'll wear it here on my shirt. I'll fly it in my house. I want it flown over state buildings and at sporting events. I don't want the American flag painted on the ground when people are going to drive over it or walk over it. I'll tell you why they put that there, that flag. They put that flag there to throw it in the face of everybody, to force you to interact with it. That's why they did it. And I'll tell you this as well. How little respect do you actually have for a flag when you put it in a place where, even through unintentional acts, it's going to get defaced from skid marks, things like this, from people dropping food or whatever it is. It's going to degrade over time. Why would anybody do such a thing where you
What if a transient pissed on it?
What if a transient pissed on it?
What are you going to do?
I guess maybe they'll go out and arrest him for felony pissing. I don't know. But this is the psychosis that we're dealing with. This is the mentality that we're dealing with. We're going to paint a pride flag on a street that you have to drive over. You have to see every time where you come to a stoplight or a stop sign. But if anybody does anything quote unquote intentional to deface it, they get arrested for felonies. This is almost a trap, is what it is. It certainly is a trap in a lot of ways. So but this, I think, illustrates, pardon the pun there with painting the flag on the ground, but it illustrates the disconnect. It's a psychosis in my mind that you have the example in Washington, D.C., and you have the sample in Spokane, Washington. This is what we're dealing with. And these are the same people, like you said, these are the same people that will keep voting for the same policies. They will keep voting for the same thing that got them there. They'll keep voting for the same governor in California that has overseen the explosion of homelessness in California when he sunk, we don't know where it went, where he sunk tens of billions of dollars into homeless mitigation, and we don't even know where that money was. I read that article to you a couple of shows ago. We don't even know where it went. And the say
20 billion.
24 billion. 24 billion over 5 years. But the same idiots who voted for him would vote for, he's going to be timed out here pretty soon, but would vote for him again and 5 more times if they could. And they keep pointing their finger at everybody else, especially outside their own state. It's their problem. And by the way, I read an article where people, I think I read the article, or that might have been some comments, people are telling me the homeless problem is the result of the federal government shipping homeless in to California. I mean, you have to be literally delusional to believe these types of things. But that's what we're up against.
I mean, how much really, you start to think about it, how much respect would you really have for a flag that people can step over?
Right.
I would never paint a flag. I wouldn't paint the American flag on the ground where people can step over it. I wouldn't step on an American flag, period. So it is this stupidity that you would paint a flag that's supposedly supposed to be for pride that you believe in on a ground that everyone else can step on.
Yeah. Look, you know what? I have my Leo Project cup, and I thought I would fly my Dallas Cowboys cup today. If you can see that, I can't remember how.
Don't hold it against some folks.
Huh? Yeah, whatever. Listen, he's a Raiders fan.
True Raider fan.
Yeah, he's a true Raider. Well, you know what? Because he's been arrested 6 times. So, got to be a felony anyway. But, I'm a Dallas here. That's better back here. I think you can see it. But I've been a Dallas Cowboys fan for 56 of my 61 years, seriously. And it would never occur, even in my own property, it would never occur to me to paint a Dallas Cowboys flag like on the ground, on a patio or things like that. because I'd have to walk on it and tear it up. In other words, just tearing it up, it would degrade. I know we're kind of off this tangent, but there's so many elements of this. There are so many aspects of this kind of stuff. It drives one crazy when you talk about it. But anyway, they got what they want. They can persecute and prosecute these three, one adult and these two kids now. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I'm going to keep an eye on the story. I'm also going to keep an eye on the story about what happens to the people who are basically calling for murder of Jews while they're spray painting American hero statues in Lafayette Park. Let's see whatever happens to any of these people. I hope they're arrested and they suffer the consequences prescribed by federal law. Yep. So I'm going to finish up with this, Marcelo. Yep. This is obviously a new story, recent story. We all saw the outcome of the Hunter Biden trial. To my surprise,
mine too.
Yeah, to my surprise, he was convicted on. The jury voted to convict him. The conviction's not official until the judge convicts him. I was clear with that on the Trump verdict. I want to be clear about it with Hunter Biden. I'm going to say right now, at kind of the end of this, is that I'm not enthusiastically hoping that Hunter Biden's going to go to prison. There are a lot of people, by the way, who committed the same crime that Hunter Biden did, and that's lying on a firearms, a federal firearms form for the purchase of a firearm, who've ended up in federal prison for the same thing he's done. So whatever the judge does, if she gives him probation or
he's not going to jail.
No, I don't think he is.
I'll tell you right now, he is not going to jail, folks. He's not going to jail. If he does, I will come back on the show and I will personally apologize for saying that. You heard it here first. He's not going to jail because he's Biden's son. End of story, period. Yes, the law and justice is not for all of us.
Well, listen.
I will tell you.
Hey, credit to my best friend here. He is absolutely solid on his opinion. I'm telling you right now, let's be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen. I doubt that he will. I agree with you that you say he won't. I lean that way. But what my point is that I'm not looking for blood in this. Here's one of the reasons. Here's the main thing. This is such a straightforward case. He lied in a form. Then he gave the form to the federally licensed gun dealer, which is a separate crime. He handed the form to him, left it at the gun shop. And then his third crime was possessing the gun when he's an addict. And yes, I know there are a lot of you out there who would like to talk about the Second Amendment aspect of this. And that's a very interesting aspect of this. But it's not really germane to what happened in this trial right now. That's for the Supreme Court later on to decide and things like that. But right now, we know that he did violate current law. So whether he goes to jail or not, it's a different story. We'll see what happens. But here is one of the...
By the way, before you finish, if you did that, or I did that, or Mark did that, we would go to jail.
Yeah, we go to jail. So we go to jail.
Keep that.
And I do believe that.
Yeah.
I do believe that. So...
Sorry.
Here is such a juicy aspect of this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go back in time a little bit to the 2020 presidential campaign and when the laptop story broke. Now, we all know what happened. The mainstream media all got in lockstep, literally shut down searches of the laptop. What information you could find was unanimous across the board that it was quote unquote Russian disinformation. It was a Russian plant trying to sway the election in Donald Trump's favor. You have the 51 so-called intelligence experts that signed the memorandum saying that they all were very sure that this is Russian disinformation, that it's a scam. The laptop is not real. We all remember this. I'm not making this up. We all know what happened. Fast forward to just several days ago, literally the first exhibit from the prosecution. Now, by this, it's also fascinating, but the first exhibit from the Department of Justice that they presented in the prosecution of Hunter Biden was what? The laptop.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
The judge, the jury, everybody got to see the laptop and see what was on it. in regards to this particular crime. So now, again, this is in 2020, and actually goes back before that, but going back to 2020, it was the Trump administration's own DOJ, because they hated Trump, but it was the Trump administration's DOJ that failed to prosecute. It's actually going back to 2018. Let me go back to 2018 with Hunter Biden and the gun charges. Back then, in Trump's administration, they had this case because of whistleblowers. They had this case and other cases against Hunter Biden that they dragged their feet on, specifically the tax evasion charges. Now he's going to be prosecuted for that, but not all of them. The most serious tax evasion charges died under the statute of limitations because the DOJ under Trump dragged their feet and they didn't bring the case in time for those cases to hold up and under the statute of time. But you fast forward in 2020, we were told that this was a lie. It was all false. It was all Russian. And now the Department of Justice uses that quote unquote Russian disinformation to prosecute Hunter Biden. Again, this is like the Lafayette statues and the pride flag in Spokane, Washington. These people there is a psychosis. They're not living in reality. They're not working based on the rule of law, which is supposed to be blind. You follow the rule of law. The only reason that this case came to trial in the first place is because of the one judge. Thank God for this judge when they were trying to push through this plea bargain where he would take responsibility for XYZ, Hunter Biden, but he'd be immune from prosecution for the rest of his life for any charges. That was long. Remember that? Remember that?
Yeah, no, I know.
It was real. And the judge said, well, let me look, what the hell are you talking about? And would not let it happen. Would not listen. No. That's BS. This is ridiculous. So then Hunter Biden and his team had a choice. They had a choice of plead guilty to the gun charge, just plead guilty to it, get it over with, or take it to court. They decided to take it to court. That's the only reason we're here now. They wanted to take it to court. They said no. And so now, I'm forgetting the prosecutor's name. I should know anyway. But the prosecutor now he had to prosecute Hunter Biden because the defense said, nope, we're not going to take a plea deal. We're not going to plead guilty to it. That's how we ended up here. And this is why the jury was out for less than 3 hours, because it was simple. Did he sign this, and did he know that he was a drug addict? Yes and yes.
He was smoking the crack pipe while he was signing.
I think he was signing with the crack pipe. It was a burnt residue that was on the. Yeah, that's what he used. It was all carbon. By the way, it was carbon based. He should be going to prison for making it hotter in the earth right now.
That's right.
Right.
Climate change.
Smoking the crack pipe.
Yep.
That's what
we should wait. That's our next segment.
I think we should do the next segment on that. Yeah, climate heater. That's what he is. So I want you to think about that, though, folks, that how bizarre this whole thing is. The piece of evidence that was claimed to be made up was a piece of evidence that convicted Hunter Biden. It was a slam dunk case. It should never have gone to court, but they decided to, and here we go. So I talked about the Second Amendment issue. And again, I won't get into that for time's sake, but that's an element of this. They may try to fight this based on the Second Amendment issue about the Second Amendment's absolute, that the Constitution doesn't say anything about, if you are on narcotics, you can't have a firearm. And I agree, the Second Amendment doesn't say that. But if that's going to be litigated, as a matter of fact, I think the Supreme Court is ruling out a case about this, or they're going to pretty soon. So we'll see what happens. But I just wanted to touch on that. So for those of you out there, and like Marcelo said, you know who you are. You know who you are. And for those of you who bought into the nonsense that the laptop was Russian disinformation 4 years ago, where do you stand now? And by the way, where do those liars who signed that memorandum, that letter, saying that based on their expertise, this was Russian information, none of them have apologized for it. None of them. Only a couple of them have spoken about it. And if I had signed something like that and I really believed what I was saying was true, I'd be the first to get on this podcast or get in front of any camera and say, you know what? I was wrong. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. It was in good faith. And they could even lie and say that. We really wouldn't know for sure if they're telling the truth now, but they could at least get up there and say, no, I really believed it and I made a mistake. But these 51 who were so enthusiastic about getting on camera and all of the places, and MSNBC and CNN and all of the usual suspect outlets, they were so enthusiastic because they did not want Trump to get reelected, and this was their October surprise kind of thing about the laptop. Where are they now? And I'm telling you right now, you can hate Donald Trump as much as you want to, but where are these people that were so proud to go on and talk about their expertise? Why are they so cowardly now? Because that's what they are. They're cowards. They are disgraceful, despicable cowards. And they don't have the guts to come back on and at least say, I wouldn't believe them, but at least say, you know what? I really thought that it was. Clearly it wasn't Russian disinformation, and I stand corrected. But they won't even do that. Marcelo, I'll turn it over to you for the finish.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. These people, and I think you said it perfectly. They're cowards. What else can you do? I still believe that these people hate America. They hate the rule of law. You have to start wondering, folks, when people talk about law and order, why is it that the first thing that comes into your mind is Republican? Think about that. Look, nobody wants to be assaulted going to a store with his kid. Nobody wants to fear about getting robbed going to get ice cream. Nobody. I don't know a single person. Nobody wants their car to be, they don't want to be carjacked at a red light. Nobody. But why is it that you keep voting for these people that hate America, that hate the rule of law? Why? Why? Listen, on November 5th, do me a favor. Put Republican and Democrat aside. Vote for your families. You vote for your families. That's a party you should vote for. Vote for the future of your children. Vote for the safety of your grandchildren, the safety of your wife, the safety of your kids, your parents, you name it. Vote for them first when you go to the ballot box. And you'll see what side you sit on. I got nothing else for you folks. I mean, this is what it comes down to. There's the line has been set. Figure out what side you're on. I'm on the side of my family. I want them to be safe. And I know what party is going to help me do that. Now you make your own decision.
Amen to that, brother. Marcelo Arrue, it's always a pleasure.
Mark, it's mine. My pleasure. My honor. I love it.
Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. And like I said before, please push us out to your friends, your family, every place you can. Share it with any place you can, any person you can. We're trying to get the word out. We want to save America. We believe in the rule of law. And I know that almost everybody, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you do believe in the rule of law, but sometimes we get caught up in emotional positions and not factual, logical positions. So like Marcelo said, vote for your family. And with that said, we'll see you next time. And take care. Stay safe.
God bless.